There's 2 days left to the end of the year, and I finally finished The Court of Miracles. Ta-da! By Kester Grant. And I don't know how I feel about it. And by that I will explain. So Thief has always been my favorite class, right? Like D&D and all that, I always played it, the rogue. Because it's fun. I mean, and it's people have a way of taking it, kind of romanticizing it. So first of all, I got super excited when I opened the book and I saw that there's like an arranged list of the different guild types. In fact, I want to show you. It actually has a map of Paris, and then it shows you the Miracle Court and all of the different guilds, their symbols, their saying, the lords, and I thought that was super cool. It felt like a genuine fantasy novel in a way of like the Stormlight Archive, where you have each of the different Knights of Radiance that you could be. So, why people love Harry Potter and all that, because you get sorted, just like Percy Jackson. I love that kind of theme where you get sorted into a certain theme and you own it. So this time we stepped into the role of Eponine, if I'm saying that right. From then on, they continue to call her Nina instead of Eponine, so I'll just say Nina. She's having a very tough upbringing with her abusive father. He's raised her as a burglar, to do all the dirty work while he takes the credit and the money. And it gets even worse one day when he decides to sell off Nina's sister to someone from what we know is a flesh guild, which you might as well just call it a brothel. I will say I enjoyed the start of reading this, like, a lot. We've got our classic thief who breaks into these legendary places like prisons, palaces. It's fun. But for some reason I can't really explain, like, a fourth of the way, I just lost interest. And it's the craziest thing. I'm thinking it's because I really enjoyed the fantastical aspect that I thought this was going to be. The different guilds and learning what they all do, being introduced, each of them, their different personalities. And then it turns into more of like, okay, we got those out of the way, so let's do character building. It tries very hard to make Nina as persistent as possible. And I'm afraid that her real assets get overlooked for this cool factor that she's supposed to be with the whole thief thing. She cares deeply about wanting her sister back. And when it's nearly impossible, she latches on to someone else who takes the place of her sister, and then the obsessiveness begins. There's this motto on the back of the book that says, don't steal from a thief or something like that. And I guess this is what it's referring to. So Ettie is another important figure. She gets passed around a lot from like guild to guild in an attempt to keep her safe from one of the other guild lords, who everyone reveres because he's famous for being brutal. But to cross any of the guild members means a direct declaration of war, so they're all very reluctant to get involved. And Nina miraculously has a reason for them all to be in debt to her and for them to get involved. So it makes her this major mastermind behind all this stuff that happens, and she literally gets away with things that no one else dares to try. Like, for instance, it's illegal to enter another guild uninvited, and I can think of at least like 3 times that she just strolls right in and actively gets involved with, and nothing happens to her. Like, in fact, they usually join her. So this might be a spoiler, but I don't care. It's not major or nothing. But like the Assassin's Guild, it's widely mentioned that anybody who enters it without permission is likely to be killed on the spot. So no one even dares to try. Like, they don't even bother to leave it guarded because no one's dumb enough to do it. And of course, she just strolls right in and nobody does her anything. They just kind of hint at something, laugh at her, send her away. I don't know. There are several times when she breaks the guild rules and gets away with minimum punishment. And yeah, I know that lashings aren't minor, but compared to what she could have gotten, she quickly becomes friends with the other guild members by jumping from favor to favor. And I mean, sometimes it'd be like that. And I think something else that kind of bothers me is that everyone points out that this is like a retelling of the famous Les Miserables, forget it. It takes place in France, like around 1800. I never read what it was based off of. I never watched the movies, so I don't know anything about it. But somehow just knowing that is kind of a turnoff for me. I don't know why. And every now and then words are said in French, like as a reminder that we're still in France, as if the gloomy depression, oppression, plague stuff isn't enough. But the words never really get translated, and I just don't have the energy to look it up. And yes, I live in Louisiana, but that's a different kind of French, okay? So this book is more of a historical fiction than a fantasy, I would say. There's not a lot of fantastical elements to it. Just a girl who's a thief in a depressing time in oppression of France. They have these guilds who are thrown in every now and then to make it a little bit more interesting, but with this whole criminal underground. But I suppose I was initially drawn in by thinking that it was going to be more of a fantasy thing. And there's not even romance for people who are into that. There are several love interests, but it's not romance. Like, there's a teasing hint of it, and that's fine for me. Because if I want to read romance, I want it to be a romance book and not a book with romance in it. So it's not a big deal. It's just something I noticed because that's something a lot of readers search for some reason. So it took me a while to finish it. Once I realized it was more about following Nina than an actual, and a retelling of an actual historical event. There wasn't a story to follow. It was a cool concept, but thrown into a world I wasn't really interested in reading about. I didn't want a history lesson. I don't like political themes in my book. We know what's right and wrong. I don't like it to be pushed at me. The only reason I pushed through it at all is because the end of the year is coming up in 2 days, and I want to start the new year fresh. I couldn't rate it as high as I wanted to, but I enjoyed reading it, the writing. It's easy to take in, and I'd recommend it for the certain keywords of thief, historical fiction, or takes place in France, or takes place in somewhere else. The end did throw me a bit, and I enjoy Nina's periodically morally gray thoughts of self-preservation. So I might use the word morally gray protagonist too, except it doesn't feel quite right for some reason, because we try to make Nina out to be the hero of the story. And it's more of a survival thing than more of a dark decision, because she's constantly surrounded by people who are worse than her. But she does make some surprising choices. So I guess that's all I really have to note about it. There wasn't a lot going on, aside from the guild members and the rebellions going on in the background. She gets involved in the criminal underworld, all the guilds, and in the royalty rebellion thing. I didn't even take notes. I was just winging it and hoped I remember everything. So that's about it. This is going in my, it was okay list. Nothing really to hate about it. And I'm probably biased towards thief characters to begin with. But it was interesting to be in somewhere like France for a story location. I just wish it wasn't based off of something that we've already have. I'm going to try to work on a couple more videos before the end of the year. And this is probably the last book of the year I'm going to read. But it's not the last video, because videos are out of order just because. So, on to the next one.